and more are hitting the concert stage. A potential COVID-19 surge is not stopping the government from loosening restrictions. All inbound travelers will no longer need travel insurance and a negative antigen or RT-PCR test taken before departure. The Interagency Task Force will lift these requirements beginning Monday, May 30th, but only for visitors who have received at least 3 COVID-19 shots. Just yesterday, 14 more foreign tourists and 2 crew that went diving at the Tubataha Reef in Palawan tested positive for COVID-19. Their samples are under surveillance for variants of concern. In the meantime, minors 12 to 17 years old are required to show to enter the country, while those younger are exempted but must be accompanied by vaccinated and boosted guardians. As for college students, Malacanang says it is waiving the mandatory medical insurance for in-person classes. Now, the easing of restrictions comes as most of the country remains under the lowest alert level. Metro Manila and several other areas will keep their current alert status from June 1st to the 15th. 41 cities and provinces will have the stricter alert level 2, as shown on your screens. The province of Davao Oriental will downgrade to alert level 1. Local governments, meanwhile, are not taking the situation lightly. In Metro Manila, officials are doubling down on efforts to prevent another spike in infections. Stanley Gaheta tells us exactly what measures are in place.
The number of individuals taking booster shots against COVID-19 is still low as per the Health Department. This may lead to a new surge if Filipinos remain complacent under Alert Level 1. How ready are the local government units in Metro Manila? Will there be sufficient health services in case another surge happens? In Quezon City, the number of quarantine facilities has been reduced from 12 to 6. Besides, some of these are actually schools.
Ang difference doon sa dati, and of course, ang number of beds ito ay nasa 1,100 pa. Most of them kasi ay mga eskwelahan, yung ginamit namin noon, no, lalo na nung Delta surge. So, there is a word na magbabalik na po ang mga bata para for face-to-face classes.
On that note, there will be enough manpower and equipment available if COVID-19 cases increase.
Meron na po kami nakaprepare na schedules ng duty na anytime pwedeng i-activate. Ang dami po naming high-flow machines and ventilators na nagamit noon.
Meanwhile, e-consultation in Muntinlupa City has stopped with patients preferring to go directly to hospitals. It will resume in case of another surge. The city also has a mega quarantine facility available despite its low number of patients currently being admitted.
We have our standby isolation facility. This is 144 beds. This is run by the LGU. We still have our mobile swabbing team to go around in case na magkaroon tayo ng clustering of cases or magkaroon ng cases sa mga barangay.
E-vehicles also provide free transport, something healthcare workers will find useful should stricter restrictions be implemented again.
Our local government provides free transport for our healthcare workers. Din sa mga maliliit na mga iskinita, we have our e-trikes.
The Health Department recorded about 14 million individuals who had their booster shots. That's far from about 70 million people with complete first and second doses against the virus. The government has already decentralized the vaccination system to malls, fast food chains, and local government facilities to protect more people against the virus and make inoculation more accessible to the public. Stanley Gaheta, CNN Philippines.
The Health Department says it is holding discussions on improving the COVID-19 vaccination drive. Health Undersecretary Mirna Kabutahe says these will be in areas where vaccination rates remain low. Kabutahe adds sessions were already done in Palawan and Masbate and are ongoing in Socsagen. Quezon Province and Negros are scheduled to hold their sessions next week. The Duterte administration is now working to turn over pandemic-related reports to the team of President-elect Bongbong Marcos. No formal talks yet between the outgoing and incoming administrations, but Presidential Advisor for COVID-19 response Vince Dizon says they are preparing documents that could be of use to the new officials.
Ang DOH ang magiging lead agency, no, para sa transition ng COVID response, at nasa bagong administrasyon kung ano ang gagawin nilang approach. Ang gagawin lang namin ngayon ay hinahanda namin at dino-document natin lahat ng ating mga best practices, lahat ng magagandang ginawa, lahat ng mga lessons, lahat ng mga challenges, at yan ay ita-transition natin sa bagong administrasyon.
When asked if he will still be part of the COVID-19 response, Dizon said it would depend on the Marcos administration. Marcos has yet to name his health secretary or state if he will retain the National Task Force against COVID-19. Outgoing Bangko Sentral Governor Benjamin Diokno says he is already studying the Finance Department's proposal to increase taxes and introduce reforms to help the incoming Marcos administration settle loans. Diokno has accepted President-elect Bongbong Marcos' offer to become Finance Secretary.
I'm actually looking at this proposed fiscal consolidation package, and some are good, some may have to be revised. But to me, I think we should focus on number one, on the tax administration. Number two, focus on growing the economy. You know, when you grow the economy, you generate more revenues because revenues are elastic to the growth of the economy.
Other members of Marcos' economic team are Monetary Board member and former Socio-Economic Planning Chief Felipe Medalla, who will replace Diokno at the Bangko Sentral, and Fred Pascual, who is set to be the next Trade and Industry Secretary. Pascual is the former president of the University of the Philippines and now president of the Management Association of the Philippines. President-elect Marcos set a tougher tone on Manila's rights in the West Philippine Sea. He vowed to speak to China about the matter with a firm voice. How will he be similar or different from President Duterte, who has warmed up to China and kept a distance from the U.S.? Tristan Odalo filed this report.
A delicate balancing act between the Philippines and two global powers, China and the United States. Beijing and Washington affirmed their commitment to strengthen diplomatic ties with Manila under a Marcos presidency. But for President-elect Bongbong Marcos, it's time to talk to China with a firm voice when it comes to the West Philippine Sea and the 2016 arbitral ruling.
Considering in the West Philippine Sea that there have been these conflicts, we will not allow a single square, and even make it smaller, a single square millimeter of our maritime, coastal, and up to we are 200 kilometers rights to be trampled upon.
Marcos' statement is much stronger than his remarks during a televised debate in February where he vowed to pursue talks with China and find an agreement in solving the maritime conflict. A professor and president of Philippine Association for Chinese Studies sees similarities between the approach of Marcos and President Rodrigo Duterte's independent foreign policy.
Yes, there will be a lot of continuities in terms on how to approach China. But President-elect Marcos will promote his own brand of dealing with China. So they will open many channels of communication for pragmatic cooperation. They will explore avenues where both countries will cooperate in order to achieve mutual benefits in the West Philippine Sea.
Another foreign relations expert weighs in on Marcos' pronouncements. He says the president-elect should veer away from vague messaging and lay down his plans as chief architect of foreign policy.
Marcos Jr. should play his cards well in engaging with China and the United States. His actions must be erudite and strategic at the same time. We're not seeing that it should be a carbon copy of what President Duterte has done so far. We wanted to see the specific actions on how to implement the independent foreign policy.
Former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario says he is grateful for Marcos's uncompromising stand on the 2016 arbitral ruling. Del Rosario, who was DFA Secretary under the Aquino administration, lauds Marcos for saying that the 2016 arbitral ruling is not only a claim but also a right. Del Rosario says that while Marcos is off to a good start in dealing with the West Philippine Sea dispute, he says that Marcos should continue raising the arbitral ruling in the United Nations General Assembly, consolidate the support of allied nations, and make sure that we will have a credible defense system to further protect our territory. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
Former Combat Commissioner Rowena Guanzon faces a graft complaint over the supposed premature disclosure of her vote in the disqualification case against then-candidate Bongbong Marcos. The Citizens Crime Watch group, led by lawyer Ferdinand Topacio, filed the complaint before the Office of the Ombudsman. The group says Guanzon violated the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act for revealing her vote ahead of the Comic First Division and identifying Commissioner Amy Ferolino as the author of the resolution. Guanzon accuses Topacio of holding a grudge against her as she earlier sued him for unjust vexation. Topacio denies filing the complaint for personal reasons. Straight ahead on Newsnight, the satellite internet service firm of Elon Musk is officially entering the country. And K-pop fans are in for a treat with 4 K-pop acts on one stage this weekend. Details right here on CNN Philippines.
Timplang happy. Tosino, timplang magandang gising. Kinasal. Ito, medyo timplang umuusok. Galit-galitan. Spicy, timplang hot na hot. With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Timplados, iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Ikaw, anong Magnolia Chicken Timplados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap.
Pagang tama, mali, di makagalaw, wasak, kumukuhit, sakit ulitin. Ang Red Horse Beer, kapag ang lasa, ang sipa, tama, kayang sumabay para sa isa pang bote. Sarap ulitin ng lakas ng tama pero di wasak.
You know, music, movies, and other forms of entertainment have become a necessity to all of us as we stay home amid the pandemic. You know, even if cinemas are closed or concerts have been canceled, we somehow manage to catch our favorite film or, you know, even listen to our favorite artists, which is why every morning on New Day, we will keep you up to speed and put the spotlight on, you know, the top celebrities and, of course, their upcoming projects. So you can catch New Day, news and more every morning at 6 a.m. only here on CNN Philippines.
People are more aware of sustainability, pero nandun pa rin yung challenge on how to really live the sustainable lifestyle.
You always have to look for something deeper. Ano yung magiging impact na sa buhay mo? You always have to start somewhere. Small steps are always better than nothing.
Gusto namin, nakukuha rin ng ibang tao yung idea and ma-replicate. Kasi yung ganitong mga bagay, zero waste, pagtulong sa mga farmers, para lumaki yung impact, kailangan mas maraming gumawa.
Welcome back to Newsnight. Bombings rocked 2 areas in central Mindanao. The police have formed a special investigation task group for the blast that injured 1 person in South Cotabato, while authorities confirmed that the incident was almost simultaneous with another bomb attack in Sultan Kudarat. As George Cahilas tells us, the military sees an ISIS-linked group as behind the bombings.
A bus explosion caught on CCTV rocked Coronadal City, South Cotabato on Thursday noon, injuring 1 person and causing fear among its residents.
Initial report says the bomb was inside an unattended bag left on the bus. Some 30 kilometers away from Coronadal blast site, another explosion occurred almost simultaneously in Tacurong City.
Synchronized, cellphone initiated. Sabay-sabay, 12:30 pareho.
The military identified the members of Daule Islamia as the perpetrators of the bombings. Their possible motives, extortion and diversionary tactic. Authorities have been conducting operations against the group that killed some of its members and injuring its leader, Abu Turaife.
Nagkaroon tayo ng aerial bombing sir somewhere in Maguindanao 2 to 3 days ago, which meron silang na-incurred ng mga casualties to include yung leadership nila. We are diverting our focused military operation through this action para nisip nila na mag-shift tayo ng focus.
While the Daule Islamia in Central Mindanao is believed to be losing membership, Philippine Institute for Peace, Violence and Terrorism Research Chairperson Romel Banlawi says the group is still capable of launching violent attacks.
Mainam na nga na ganyan dahil hindi nagkaroon ng mass casualties yung kanilang violent activities, pero hindi ibig sabihin ay magiging kampante na tayo, magpatuloy tayo sa pagmamatyag sa kanilang galaw dahil meron pa rin silang intention talaga na ma-revitalize ng kanilang grupo. Sa ngayon, they are tremendously down, but they are not yet totally out.
Authorities are still identifying the suspects behind the attacks. They vowed to ensure that a similar or more destructive episode won't happen again in the area. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Police are investigating the reported bomb threats in 4 areas in Cebu City. Circulating text messages reached government employees Thursday that bombs were planted at City Hall, the Hall of Justice at the North Reclamation Area, Carbona Public Market, and along the Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway. Authorities did not find any bombs in these areas. The bomb scare happened about the same time explosions were reported in Mindanao. Police say they are coordinating with the Anti-Cybercrime Unit to find out who was behind the text messages. Acting Cebu City Mayor Don Ontiveros called for a meeting with police station commanders and ordered strict monitoring of people arriving from other provinces. In other news, the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee's report on the Farmally controversy appears to be in limbo. Chairman Richard Gordon says it still lacks 2 signatures from members. That has been the case since February. Only 7 regular members have signed the report when it needs the majority or 9 members to send it to the plenary for approval. In a text message to CNN Philippines, Gordon said he will try to sponsor it at the plenary on Monday. When asked if he's expecting 2 other colleagues to sign the report, Gordon said, quote, "Hope for the best," unquote. After 18 committee hearings, Gordon recommends charges against President Duterte, Health Secretary Francisco Duque, and other government officials and personalities over anomalies in supply deals cornered by Farmally Pharmaceutical at the height of the pandemic. The report is now in limbo with only 3 session days left in the 18th Congress. Senate President Tito Soto adds 2 Farmally executives detained at the Pasay City Jail are also set to be released after session adjourns on June 3rd. News overseas now. The small community of Uvalde in the U.S. state of Texas is still suffering from the deadly shooting that took away over a dozen lives. Chris Nguyen reports authorities are trying to determine why no one confronted the gunman before he entered the scene.
This is the agony of parents waiting outside of Robb Elementary, pleading for police to go inside as authorities say a gunman barricaded himself inside of the school Tuesday.
He walked in unobstructed initially. So from the grandmother's house to the Bardage to the school, into the school, he was not confronted by anybody.
Inside, nearly an hour of sheer terror as students and staff hid.
We were all hiding behind a stage in the cafeteria when it happened.
The gunman shot and killed 19 students and 2 teachers in a single 4th grade class. Among the victims, 10-year-old Amarie Jo Garza, whose father said she was trying to call for help when she was shot.
I just want people to know that she just died trying to save her classmates. She just wanted to save everyone.
Many questions remain about how this man was able to get inside the school and the red flags that could have been raised prior to the shooting, including text messages to a teenage girl where he writes, "I'm a go shoot up a elementary school right now."
Why did he do this? Who is this man? The suspect. We're going to find out.
Meanwhile, outside the school, a growing memorial as Uvalde tries to heal from the pain.
CNN's Chris Moulin there reporting. New COVID-19 cases and deaths are declining in most parts of the world. The World Health Organization reports weekly infections in various regions have continued to fall since the peak in January. It says only the Americas and the Western Pacific are seeing an increase in cases. Aside from COVID-19, the United States is monitoring more monkeypox infections. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control has identified 9 new cases in 7 states. All cases are within men who had sex with other men. The CDC says it is still uncertain if the outbreak will become a major concern in the U.S.
If monkeypox circulates widely here in the United States, would we worry that it could become endemic here, meaning that it would circulate at low levels among people, or in zoonotic, meaning that could there be a wildlife or animal reservoir that could occasionally infect people? I think we're in the very early days of our investigations. I think that we are working hard to identify cases, and we don't yet know how many there might be. We're working hard to contain the cases that are happening so they don't spread onward. So I think it's a little too early to tell.
Here at home, health officials are conducting internal talks for the possible acquisition of antivirals. They're also exploring sources of monkeypox vaccines. The satellite internet service firm of American tech billionaire Elon Musk is officially entering the country. The National Telecommunications Commission has approved the registration of Starlink Internet Services Philippines, a subsidiary of SpaceX. Starlink can now build and operate broadband facilities to offer internet services. Regulators issued the license just 30 minutes after Starlink submitted its application. The Philippines will be the first Southeast Asian country where Starlink would offer its services with download speeds of 100 to 200 megabits per second. More stories ahead. An NBA team has secured a ticket to the finals, and fans will get to see some of their favorite K-pop idols here in Manila very soon. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
Conquering the universe was the ultimate, but there's more. Dahil tinawag ko ako ng Panginoon for a major purpose. To guide the youth, help communities, and to bring others closer to Him. Kaya I take care of my health through proper diet, exercise, and MX3 capsule. I am ready to serve. Kasi para sa Panginoon, hindi lang ako 4th runner-up. First place ako sa puso niya.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Land Bank has always believed that in this country, we have to dream big. And so we learned to build something out of nothing. Improving the quality of life for our people. So that we can keep in step with a brave new world and make our big dreams come true.
Another day, another adventure. We're going to talk about how to look and feel your best.
Ano nga ba mga bagay na dapat i-share at dapat hindi?
We're taking you to new destinations and eco-friendly tourist spots. Let's get moving.
Hashtag proud moment. Ganda nun.
Always rise up, and for sure, you will always get there.
What we put in our bodies is actually what keeps us going.
I am doing this because this is my passion.
You're watching Newsnight on CNN. Philippines. Finals bound in the NBA for the 6th time in the last 8 seasons are the Golden State Warriors. Golden State beat the Dallas Mavericks in Game 5, 120-110. Klay Thompson scored 32 points for the Warriors. Stephen Curry went home with another victory, taking the first Magic Johnson Western Conference Finals MVP award. To face the Warriors for the championship are either the Boston Celtics or the Miami Heat. The Celtics lead the Eastern Conference Finals 3-2. The 6th match is set tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Philippine time. K-pop news now. BTS is going from the stage to the White House. The award-winning group will meet with U.S. President Joe Biden next Tuesday to address anti-Asian discrimination and discuss Asian representation. President Biden says he's committed to change, signing into law last May an act giving police resources to investigate hate crimes. For fans of 17, the boy group dropped a new music video and album today. Face the Sun, the K-pop artist's 4th record, is out. And so is the video for its upbeat title track, Hot. Let's take a look. Face the Sun is made up of 9 tracks, including the group's first English single, Darling. More hyped up for this weekend than anyone else are fans of NCT Dream, Shady's Key, Wehai, and Alice, Begin Again. K-pop Edition 2022 is happening this Sunday, 5 p.m. at the Araneta Coliseum. This is the first K-pop concert in the country since the pandemic. Only 5 members of NCT Dream will grace the stage because Mark and Hee-chan have activities in Japan. The 7-piece group is also the new face of local clothing brand Pen Shop. NCT Dream has joined fellow K-pop stars like Lisa of Blackpink and Cha Eun-woo of Astro as the company's ambassadors. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Iyo Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
RPN Radio Philippines Network DXTV Dipolo Radio Ronda.
Tanong ng Bayan, ano ang maaaring maranasan matapos magbabakuna? Ang sagot, bagamat hindi lahat ng nabakunahan ay makakaranas ng side effects, maaaring maranasan ang mga sumusunod: pananakit, pamumula at pamamaga sa parteng tinurukan, banayad na lagnat, sakit ng ulo, pananakit ng katawan at kasukasuan tulad ng sa trangkaso. Huwag mag-alala dahil normal, banayad at pansamantala lang ang mga ito. Kusang mawawala pagkatapos ng 1 hanggang 3 araw. Senyales ito na bumubuo ng proteksyon ng katawan laban sa COVID-19. Nabakunahan man o hindi pa, sundin pa rin ang minimum public health standards para patuloy ang proteksyon. Magsuot ng face mask at face shield, dumistansya sa ibang tao ng 1 metro o higit pa, hugasan ang mga kamay na mabuti at madalas. Siguruhin na laging maayos ang ventilasyon sa mga lugar na pupuntahan. Para sa dagdagang impormasyon, bisitahin ang DOH website sa doh.gov.ph at Facebook page. COVID-19, kaya nating tapusin. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, UNICEF at ng himpilang ito.
Sedentary living due to pandemic restrictions is leading to lifestyle diseases. For instance, people working from home are becoming less physically active and binging more on snacks that are higher in salt, fat, and unwanted sugars. One common condition resulting from these behaviors is hypertension, and one of the most dangerous and also one of the conditions. That is why it's called the silent killer, but it doesn't have to be. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we'll bring you the knowledge and care you need, especially in this time of COVID-19. You're watching Mental Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Watching your blood pressure is important because your arteries carry blood from your heart to other parts of the body. Our guests today will talk about this topic and share their knowledge. Let's welcome Dr. Eduardo Yambao Jr. He's a cardiologist from the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. Also with us is Dr. Romel Punongbayan, who is an internal medicine and hypertension specialist from the Medical City Clark and Bulacan Medical Center. Most of the time, hypertension has no obvious symptoms to indicate that something is wrong. One thing you can do to protect yourself is by checking your blood pressure. In the blood pressure reading, there are two numbers, itong systolic and the diastolic. I'll start the conversation with Doc Ome. Please explain what this means and ano ba yung normal BP range na dapat makita natin?
The normal BP that we have to really attain is 120/80 and below. However, the technique of taking your blood pressure is really crucial. So if you do your blood pressure taking in a public place, probably you can have an inaccurate blood pressure reading. But in general, we have to really make sure that we are taking the blood pressure the right. So it has to be quiet, you have to be seated constantly with your back support, your feet are flat on the floor, and your measuring device should be in the level of your heart. So however, most of the cases, I'm seeing a lot of technical errors. So it's really very crucial to take your blood pressure properly.
Now, a hypertensive crisis means that there's a severe increase in blood pressure, and one of the risk factors for this is a stroke. When this happens, the heart may not be able to pump blood properly. Dr. Ed, if one notices a spike in their BP, biglang pagtaas, what should their initial reaction be?
When there is a sudden spike in blood pressure, they should first check, number one, if they are into certain stressors which would cause elevated blood pressure. This would include probably they are in certain activities like exercise, or they're really healthy or laughter, or they may have a recent intake of food that may elevate your blood pressure, like salty food or foods high in fat or caffeinated drinks. After ruling this out, they have to also make sure that they properly took their medications. But if the blood pressure is still on the high side, then they might need to immediately consult with their attending doctor, or if it doesn't really go down, they should go to the emergency room.
Now, hypertension is one of the leading causes of illness and of premature death here in the Philippines. The usual suspects that may cause this are the food we eat. In the Philippines, we love to eat fatty and oily food such as adobo and sisig, which can contribute to an increase in someone's blood pressure. Dr. Ome, aside from a person's diet, what are some of the risk factors for hypertension?
Actually, the more common really risk factor for hypertension is number one, genetics. Then the more popular ones are alcohol intake, smoking, being sedentary or doesn't have any physical activity. Even obesity and diabetes mellitus are the more common risk factors for hypertension.
We already know that smoking is bad for our lungs, but it also increases our risk for heart disease as well as hypertension. Dr. Ed, explain naman natin yun. How does this happen naman? Why is smoking always the culprit sa lahat ng mga masamang bagay sa katawan?
Nicotine in the cigarette can cause the blood vessels or the tubes that carries blood in the body to weaken, or they become narrow also. The nicotine also leads to faster heartbeat, and this all leads to an elevated blood pressure. That's why if you will quit smoking, the blood vessels will improve, the blood pressure decreases, and the risk for heart disease or heart attack will also decrease.
Now, aside from smoking, drinking too much alcohol can also increase our blood pressure to unhealthy levels. Having more than 3 drinks temporarily increases the blood pressure, but repeated binge drinking can lead to long-term increases. How does alcohol affect someone's blood pressure?
When a person drinks alcohol, so usually the heart rate increases because it excites our body, and with the increasing heart rate, there would be a concomitant increase in blood pressure. And if there would be a constant exposure to this increasing heart rate, then patient would eventually have a long-term hypertension and would not just be a situational increase in blood pressure.
Earlier, you mentioned that one of the really significant factors sa hypertension ay ang genetics or napagmamanahan nito. Now, if someone has a strong familial line of hypertensive parents, grandparents, whatnot, What can they do about this?
Since the genes are unmodifiable, so we cannot modify the genes, what we can do is just to delay the onset of your hypertension. So there have been a lot of genes related to hypertension, and definitely 30 to 60% of hypertensives are still the hereditary ones, the inherited ones. We call it the primary or the essential hypertension. So technically, what we can do is just to delay by modifying our lifestyle.
Now, people with high blood pressure puts themselves at higher risk for COVID-19 due to their weaker immune system. Doc Ome, what can people with hypertension do to protect themselves from coronavirus, since it's still with us up to now?
Hypertension will, with the implication of your ACE2 receptors and the abnormalities in your renin-angiotensin system and some other receptors like your toll-like receptors, which is responsible for inflammation. Hypertensive patients are really at risk for acquiring the COVID virus. So what they can do is to just continue their medication so that their blood pressure is within normal levels. Probably it will lower the risk for them to acquire the infection.
Doc Ome, as a follow-up to that, with regards to vaccinations, there's been a lot of conflict, especially when it comes to the vaccination sites. Hindi pumapasa yung mga hypertensives dahil mataas ang BP nila, either hindi nila nakukuha yung booster nila or vaccination nila. What is the current guidelines now? Ano bang dapat alalahanin ng mga hypertensives whenever they get their vaccine or their booster?
They have been instructed to continue their hypertension medications before going to the vaccination site because Filipinos are really needle phobic. So when they go to a vaccination place, there's an increased stress. So the tendency is for them to elevate their blood pressure. So the better thing to do is before going to the vaccination site, make sure that you take your regular antihypertensive medication.
Now, when left undetected, hypertension can cause a number of problems. When we return, we'll talk about the complications of hypertension. We're your connection to healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. High blood pressure can silently damage the body for years before showing any symptoms. Uncontrolled high blood pressure can cause disabilities, poor quality of life, or even a heart attack. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk. We're together in health. The excessive pressure on your artery walls caused by high blood pressure can damage your blood vessels as well as other organs. Now, the higher the blood pressure and the longer it goes uncontrolled, the greater the damage here. Now, Dr. Ed, what are the most common complications that are caused by consistently elevated, uncontrolled high blood pressure?
There are a lot of complications from uncontrolled high blood pressure. This includes heart attack or stroke, heart failure or inability of the heart to adequately supply oxygen throughout the body. Aneurysm can also arise, which means there is weakening and bulging in the walls of the blood vessels. Patients can also have eye problems like blurring of vision, bleeding in the eyes, or double vision. And long-term, uncontrolled high blood pressure can eventually also damage the kidneys.
Healthy arteries are flexible, they're strong, they're elastic, and their inner lining is smooth so that blood flows freely to supply vital organs and tissues with nutrients as well as oxygen. Now, hypertension gradually increases the pressure of blood flowing through those arteries. Dr. Ed, when it comes to our arteries, a lot of our viewers are familiar with cholesterol and its effects on the heart. What is the relation with this with elevated high blood pressure?
If there is elevated high blood pressure, the arteries in the heart and the rest of the body becomes less elastic. And when they become less elastic, they cannot function well, which is they cannot supply the adequate oxygen and nutrients. Because of this, heart disease can eventually happen. That's why in prolonged and uncontrolled hypertension, patient can have heart failure, or they could also have ischemic heart disease, or the heart muscle not having adequate oxygen, or eventually they could have heart enlargement. And they would feel shortness of breath, They could experience chest pain, or they get tired easily when this happens.
Now, elevated blood pressure, as explained, can cause many heart problems such as coronary artery disease, enlarged left heart, as well as heart failure, as Dr. Ed mentioned. But Dr. Ed, nowadays we associate all of these elevated blood pressure with a certain body type, with diet, too much cholesterol in the diet, too much unhealthy eating or whatnot. But is that the case nowadays? Meron bang itsura ang isang hypertensive? Or can someone look healthy outside but still be hypertensive?
A person can look normal outside, like for example, being on the normal weight, a normal build, but can still be hypertensive. Because genetics, as what Dr. Punumbayan also mentioned, do play a big role in high blood pressure. This brings to the importance of having a regular follow-up and regular monitoring of blood pressure. And other factors like food, obesity could just factor in or further aggravate a person with genetically predisposed condition to develop hypertension.
Now, hypertension can also damage the brain because our brain depends on a nourishing blood supply to work properly. Dr. Ome, can you talk more about high blood pressure and its relation or its risks sa ating brain?
Actually, when we talk about hypertension and brain, we are talking more of the complications of hypertension, which is stroke. And it's around less than 50% of the time, hypertension is the cause of stroke. So this can lead to morbidity, like paralysis or poor quality of life, and some even die because of a certain fatal stroke due to hypertension.
Kidneys filter excess fluid and waste from the blood, a process that requires healthy blood vessels. Now, high blood pressure can damage those blood vessels, as we learned earlier, in and leading towards the kidneys. Dr. Ome, explain natin yon, yung link naman with hypertension and paano na-apektuhan ng ating kidneys.
Hypertensive patients has elevated sympathetic tone and endothelial dysfunction. There's also water retention and salt retention. Eventually, will destroy the blood vessels of the kidney. And this will lead, at worst, they go to dialysis.
Let's talk about the eyes, because hypertension can also damage the blood vessels that supply blood to the eyes. And this can cause retinopathy, choroidopathy, or even optic neuropathies. Dr. Ome, pag-usapan naman natin yon, yung link of hypertension sa mata.
Because when you are hypertensive, your blood vessels in the eyes, specifically at the retina, will have some abnormal changes. There will be thickening of your intima, and there will be increased degeneration of the hyalin of the blood vessels of your eyes. Eventually, this will lead into poor circulation, and eventually, this will even cause blindness.
Okay. Now that we know what hypertension can lead to, it's important that we know how to lower it and stay healthy. Your health is our mission. This is MedTalk Health Talk. If you've been diagnosed with hypertension, you might think about taking medications to bring your numbers down. But lifestyle plays an important role in lowering your blood pressure as well. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk, where your care always comes first. If you successfully control your blood pressure with a healthy lifestyle, you might avoid, delay, or even reduce the need for medications. Dr. Ome, what lifestyle changes should one make to lower their blood pressure?
Diet and lifestyle really has great impact on the blood pressure. So we have to have a regular exercise, not being sedentary. So at least it's more of most days of the week, at least 30 minutes moderate intensity cardio or aerobic exercise. And definitely we should have a good diet. Specifically, we call a good diet diet approach to stop hypertension. This is composed of whole grains, vegetables and fruit, less of saturated fat and trans fat, high in potassium, and definitely low in sodium. This is a great way to lower your blood pressure as much as 10 millimeters mercury on your systolic blood pressure.
Having high blood pressure typically shows no symptoms, which is why it is important to have yourself checked regularly by a medical expert. But home monitoring can also help you keep tabs on your blood pressure and if certain lifestyle changes are working. Now, make sure to talk to your doctor before you buy a gadget for home monitoring of your blood pressure. Dr. Ed, how can we properly check our BP at home? Let's start first with ano ba yung maganda to have at home? Anong klaseng gadget? We have electronic ones, we have the manual ones, we have the wrist ones even nowadays. What is your recommendation?
For home BP monitoring, since usually it's the person himself will check his blood pressure, it is ideal that he use an electronic or digital BP monitor. It could either be a wrist digital monitor or the arm digital monitor, and make sure it's properly charged or it has an adequate battery so that it could function well. Then he should find a right place, a quiet place where he is relaxed, and then sit down and make sure that there's no tight-fitting clothes affecting the arm where the BP cuff will be placed. After which, place the arm just at the level of the heart and the blood pressure cuff above the elbow.
Okay.
Then the person should keep still and quiet while the machine is taking the blood pressure. Then after taking the measurement, he could take another 2 or 3 readings, then compare it. And ideally, the person should also record the blood pressure measurement so that he could show the readings to his doctor on follow-up.
Now, Dr. Ome, nowadays with technology, there are a lot of gadgets that help with monitoring one's blood pressure. Even watches can do it nowadays. But how accurate are these? Are these something that gives as accurate an information as those as what hypertension specialists or cardiologists use in their clinic?
Actually, most of the wearables, we call it the wearables, are still in the process of validation. Some of the gadgets can monitor your heart rate, can monitor the calories burned. But regarding the blood pressure, I still recommend those machines that has been mentioned by Dr. Ed. So these are more accurate because they are validated already. And the fitness trackers are just probably an adjunct to the risk factors, like if you do exercise, how many calories do you burn, how many, what is your target heart rate. Probably this is the practical usability of your tracker to track your physical activity and your parameters while doing some interventions to alleviate your high blood pressure.
Now, this discussion was indeed very helpful. And with that, I'd like to thank cardiologist Dr. Eduardo Yambao Jr. and hypertension specialist Dr. Romel Punongbayan for sharing your expertise with all of us today. Hypertension may be the silent killer, but it can often be prevented or reduced by eating healthy, maintaining proper weight, regular exercise, and not smoking. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We'll see you next time.